I still remember the way he looked at me that night, like I was the only girl in the world. His eyes didn't just look, they searched. They asked questions I didn't have answers to yet. And when I finally gave in to his gaze, something inside me unraveled. I should have known something that intense never stays gentle forever. I met Mason on the rooftop of a friend's party, the kind of gathering where no one really knows who invited who, and where the music feels too loud until the right person starts talking to you. He wasn't supposed to be there. He didn't even like parties, he told me later. But that night he was standing right by the edge, drink in hand, lost in the city lights like he was memorizing them. I was sipping on a warm soda, trying not to look awkward standing alone, when he turned to me and asked, "Do you think everyone here is pretending to be someone they're not?" I laughed, partly because of the question, and partly because he had no idea how close to home that hit. I'd just gotten out of a long mess of meaningless flings, the kind of 304 phase that people joke about but don't realize can hollow you out. I wasn't proud of it. I wasn't ashamed either. I was searching, and I didn't want to be found yet. But somehow Mason saw me anyway. We talked the entire night about books and music and what it means to feel safe with someone. I remember how his voice dropped when he said, "You don't seem like the kind of girl who settles." And I told him honestly, "I'm not ready to date, not right now." He nodded. No disappointment, no pressure, just this gentle smile that made me feel like I'd been heard for the first time in a long while. From that night on, we became something. Not lovers, not strangers, something dangerously in between. We started texting every night, then calling, then staying up until 3 a.m., talking about dreams we didn't even know we had. He made me playlists. I sent him voice notes of poetry I used to write before I forgot how to feel things properly. Every time I saw his name light up my phone, my chest felt warmer. It wasn't long before he became my safe space. There was this one night I'd had a terrible breakdown after running into someone from my past. I didn't even call Mason. I just texted a sad face emoji. Within 10 minutes, he was at my door with ice cream, a hoodie that smelled like him, and a playlist called For Your Stormy Nights. He held me while I cried without asking for explanations. He never needed a reason to care. That night I almost kissed him. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I pulled back. "I'm not ready yet," I whispered. And he just tucked a strand of hair behind my ear and said, "Then I'll wait." My heart cracked open at that, not because I was in love, but because someone was finally loving me right. Or so I thought. Days turned into weeks. We went on non-dates, which felt more romantic than any real dates I'd had before. Coffee runs that lasted hours. Silent car rides where his hand would brush mine and we'd both pretend not to notice. He once surprised me with a mini picnic on my apartment rooftop, the same kind of spot where we first met. Fairy lights, music from his phone, cheap wine, laughter, and his eyes on me, always. "I know I'm not your boyfriend," he said, "but you're the only girl I think about when I wake up." That line wrecked me in the best way. I was falling, slowly, secretly, willingly, even though I had told myself I wasn't ready, even though I had told him I wasn't. But isn't that the cruel thing about love? It doesn't ask for permission, it just walks in and makes itself at home. I started imagining what it would be like to finally let myself love him, to say yes to something real again, to move past my chaotic, lonely nights with strangers and choose something that felt like peace. But then something changed. It was subtle, like a breeze that turns cold without warning. He started taking longer to reply, canceling plans last minute, telling me he was just tired when we'd usually talk for hours. I brushed it off. He was allowed to have bad days. We all do. But there was this one evening that stuck with me, and I still replay it sometimes like a warning I didn't understand back then. We were watching a movie on my couch, my head on his shoulder, and I turned to him and said, "Do you think we'll ever be something?" He paused for just a second too long, then kissed the top of my head and said, "Let's not ruin what we have." And something in me froze. What did that even mean? Wasn't this already something? I laughed it off, but the silence that followed felt heavier than the question. For the first time in weeks, I felt unsure. Was he waiting for me, or just passing time? I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to let fear win. But I also couldn't unhear the hesitation in his voice, or the fact that when I looked into his eyes that night, they weren't searching anymore. They were hiding something. And deep down, I was afraid I already knew what it was. There's a moment, a very specific moment, when love begins to feel more like guessing than knowing. When you go from smiling at someone's messages to rereading them, searching for meaning between the lines. That moment hit me on a Tuesday afternoon when Mason texted, "Can't talk, work stuff, tile." No heart, no emoji, no miss you. Just cold, clipped words from the man who used to stay up just to hear me breathe. I told myself I was overthinking. He was busier lately. A new project, he'd said. Something about a tech launch that required all his attention. And I tried to be understanding, supportive, patient. Because wasn't that what he had done for me? Waited until I was ready? Held space for me through my own mess? But something wasn't sitting right. I started noticing things, little things. Like how he always kept his phone screen face down now, even when we were alone. Or how his notifications were suddenly silent. Or the way he started replying with generic phrases. Yeah, sure, IDK, like a bot, not the boy who once wrote me a 4-paragraph goodnight text describing how much he adored my laugh. I didn't want to be that girl, the one who snoops, the one who nags, the one who turns love into suspicion. But I was starting to feel like something was slipping between us, and I didn't know how to hold on anymore. One night I asked him, as gently as I could, "Is something going on?" He looked up from his food, blinked twice, and said, "What do you mean?" I hated that answer, the deflection, the performative confusion. So I just said, "You feel distant." He put down his fork, leaned back, and sighed. "I told you this week is just insane. You always assume the worst, Rose." I flinched. It wasn't the words, it was the tone. Dismissive, defensive. Like I was an obligation instead of a person he cared about. I bit my tongue, but that night while he showered, I sat in his room and stared at his dresser. I saw a pair of earrings, gold hoops, on the edge of the mirror. I don't wear gold. I never have. My stomach sank. I reached for them but stopped halfway. No, I wasn't going to do this. I wasn't going to let fear turn me into someone I'm not. But that didn't mean I could pretend either. Flashbacks started hitting me like glass shards. The time I asked him to come with me to my cousin's engagement, and he said he had a family emergency, but didn't even follow up with a call. The time I posted a cute photo of us on my story and he replied, "Maybe don't tag me next time. I'm weird about social media." But then 2 nights later, I saw a picture of him at a bar on someone else's story, standing way too close to a girl I didn't recognize. The time I asked, "Do you think you'll ever be ready for something real with me?" And he said, "Maybe I'm just not the relationship type anymore." Anymore? What changed? What did he mean by that? The Mason I knew, or thought I knew, was tender, present, curious about me. Now he was just distracted, half there, like a man already walking out the door but pretending to still be inside. And I started noticing more. He used to keep his laptop open. Now it was always locked. He used to leave voice notes. Now he only typed. And when I leaned my head against his chest, I didn't hear his heartbeat. I heard silence. Heavy, awkward, unfamiliar silence. I tried to reconnect. I planned a small dinner at my place, lit candles, made his favorite pasta, put on the playlist he once said made him feel safe. When he walked in, he looked tired, not the good kind, the emotionally gone kind. Still, I tried. We ate, barely talked. I asked about his week. He shrugged. I complimented his new jacket. He said, "It's just something I threw on." And then his phone buzzed. He didn't check it right away, but I saw his jaw tighten. I watched him swipe it face down. And for the first time, I felt something between us shatter. Not because he was hiding a message, but because I could feel he didn't want me to see it. I wanted to scream, but instead I smiled. "You okay?" I asked, even though I knew he wasn't. He nodded. "Yeah, just tired." Again with the tired. I cleaned up while he scrolled mindlessly on the couch. Then, just as I walked back into the room, he quickly slipped his phone into his jacket pocket, like a teenager hiding something from a parent. And then I did something I hadn't done in months. I lied. "I think I left my lip balm in your car," I said. He stood up quickly. "I'll grab it." "No, it's fine." No, I got it." Why did he react so fast? Why was his jacket suddenly so important? I stood still, watched him head toward the door, and just as he turned, I reached out, instinctively, clumsily, and touched his jacket pocket. He flinched, hard, like I had touched something radioactive. And that was the moment. Not the earrings, not the late replies, not the canceled plans or the silences. That flinch was the moment I knew I wasn't imagining things. He looked at me. We both froze. Then he laughed, awkward, forced. "Ticklish," he said. But I wasn't laughing. I stood there as he walked out and my hands started to shake. That night, I sat in my bed scrolling through our old texts. The "Good morning, beautiful" ones. The ones where he told me he'd wait for me no matter how long it took. The ones where he called me his light. And I wondered, who was he texting now? Who was she? Because I was no longer the one he called before bed, and I hadn't been for a while. But I hadn't wanted to see it until now. And the worst part? I still didn't know if he was pulling away because of something I did, or because he never really meant to stay in the first place. There are moments you don't forget, not because they were beautiful, but because they left a bruise on your soul so deep it echoes every time you breathe. That moment came for me on a rainy Friday evening, the kind that feels cinematic but cruel, as if the sky knows your heart is about to break. Mason hadn't texted me all day. No check-ins, no replies, nothing. It had been happening more often lately, but that day felt different, final almost. My gut wouldn't stop twisting. My hands kept scrolling back to our last conversation. Me, call me when you're free? Him, K. Just K, the bare minimum. I don't know what came over me, but I couldn't sit in that silence anymore, so I did something I hadn't done before. I drove to his place unannounced. And I'll never forget what I saw when I got there. His car was in the driveway. The lights were on upstairs, and for a second I felt stupid. Maybe I was just being dramatic. Maybe he was just tired like always. But then I saw movement through the front window. A silhouette, too, actually. And laughter, feminine, soft, familiar. I stepped closer. That's when I saw her. Long dark hair, slender hands, wearing his hoodie, the one he always left at my place. Lit candles, made his favorite pasta, put on the playlist he once said made him feel safe. When he walked in, he looked tired, not the good kind, the emotionally gone kind. Still, I tried. We ate, barely talked. I asked about his week. He shrugged. I complimented his new jacket. He said, "It's just something I threw on." And then his phone buzzed. He didn't check it right away, but I saw his jaw tighten. I watched him swipe it face down. And for the first time, I felt something between us shatter, not because he was hiding a message, but because I could feel he didn't want me to see it. I wanted to scream, but instead I smiled. "You okay?" I asked, even though I knew he wasn't. He nodded. "Yeah, just tired." Again with the tired. I cleaned up while he scrolled mindlessly on the couch. Then, just as I walked back into the room, he quickly slipped his phone into his jacket pocket, like a teenager hiding something from a parent. And then I did something I hadn't done in months. I lied. "I think I left my lip balm in your car," I said. He stood up quickly. "I'll grab it." "No, it's fine." No, I got it." Why did he react so fast? Why was his jacket suddenly so important? I stood still, watched him head toward the door, and just as he turned, I reached out, instinctively, clumsily, and touched his jacket pocket. He flinched, hard, like I had touched something radioactive. And that was the moment, not the earrings, not the late replies, not the canceled plans or the silences. That flinch was the moment I knew. I wasn't imagining things. He looked at me. We both froze. Then he laughed. Awkward, forced. "Ticklish," he said. But I wasn't laughing. I stood there as he walked out and my hands started to shake. That night, I sat in my bed scrolling through our old texts, the "Good morning, beautiful" ones, the ones where he told me he'd wait for me no matter how long it took, the ones where he called me his light. And I wondered, who was he texting now? Who was she? Because I was no longer the one he called before bed, and I hadn't been for a while, but I hadn't wanted to see it until now. And the worst part? I still didn't know if he was pulling away because of something I did, or because he never really meant to stay in the first place. There are moments you don't forget, not because they were beautiful, but because they left a bruise on your soul so deep it echoes every time you breathe. That moment came for me on a rainy Friday evening, the kind that feels cinematic but cruel, as if the sky knows your heart is about to break. Mason hadn't texted me all day. No check-ins, no replies, nothing. It had been happening more often lately, but that day felt different, final, almost. My gut wouldn't stop twisting. My hands kept scrolling back to our last conversation. Me, "Call me when you're free?" Him, "K. Just K. The bare minimum." I don't know what came over me, but I couldn't sit in that silence anymore, so I did something I hadn't done before. I drove to his place unannounced, and I'll never forget what I saw when I got there. His car was in the driveway. The lights were on upstairs, and for a second I felt stupid. Maybe I was just being dramatic. Maybe he was just tired like always. But then I saw movement through the front window. A silhouette. Two, actually. And laughter. Feminine. Soft. Familiar. I stepped closer. That's when I saw her. Long dark hair, slender hands, wearing his hoodie, the one he always left at my place. She was curled up beside him on the couch, her legs under his, a wine glass in her hand. And he was smiling, really smiling, that open, boyish grin he used to give me, that grin I hadn't seen in weeks. I stood outside for I don't know how long, rain soaking through my hoodie, arms numb, throat closing in on itself. I should have left, should have walked away right then, but I didn't. I knocked. It wasn't even loud, more like a tap, desperate, uncertain. After a few seconds, the door creaked open, and there he was, Mason. His face changed the second he saw me. Shock, then guilt, then something cold, like inconvenience. "Rose," he started. I stared past him, into the living room. She had disappeared down the hall. "Who is she?" My voice cracked, not with anger, with disbelief. He stepped outside, closing the door behind him like I was some secret he needed to hide. "It's not what you think." I laughed, sharp, broken. "Don't you dare say that line. Don't you dare insult me with that cliché." He ran a hand through his hair, avoiding my eyes. "I didn't plan for this. You said you weren't ready. I was trying to give you space." I blinked. My hands were shaking. "So you gave me space by replacing me?" His jaw clenched. "You made it clear you didn't want anything serious. You said it yourself. You were in your 304 phase and you needed time. I respected that." Respected? That word felt like acid. "No," I said, voice rising. "You waited just long enough to make me feel safe. Then you moved on the second I started to open up." "It's not like that." "Then what is it like, Mason? Explain it to me. Explain how the man who showed up for me in the middle of the night, who kissed my forehead and called me his light, suddenly becomes the guy hiding another girl in his apartment." His silence answered louder than any words could. I backed away, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall in front of him. "All this time," I whispered, "I blamed myself. I thought I was asking for too much. I thought my fear, my hesitancy, was ruining what we had. But it wasn't me, it was you. You were never honest with me." He finally looked at me, and there was no denial in his eyes, just sadness, regret, maybe shame. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he murmured. That was the part that broke me. Didn't mean to? What does that even mean? You don't accidentally hurt someone every day for weeks. You don't flinch when they touch your pocket unless you're hiding something. You don't sit on the couch with someone else in the hoodie that smells like you and her unless you've moved on, silently, selfishly. I couldn't speak anymore. My heart wasn't just breaking. It was cracking wide open, pouring out every little hope I had stitched together for him. I turned, walked back to my car. He didn't follow me, didn't call out my name, didn't try to stop me. That silence was louder than any scream. When I got home, I collapsed onto my bed, still soaked in rain. I stared at the ceiling for hours. I thought about every little moment, the way he used to send me sunrise pictures, how he once told me I was a soft place to land, how he'd kiss the corner of my mouth like it was a secret only we shared. All of it felt like a lie now, or worse, a performance, one he exited the moment the curtain fell. I cried, not just for him, but for the girl I was when I met him, hesitant, guarded, yet still so hopeful. I cried for all the versions of me that waited for his texts, that dressed up for non-dates, that held back kisses because I believed love meant patience. And in the end, it didn't matter, because even when I said I wasn't ready, he still left first. The day after I saw him with her, I didn't get out of bed. Not because I wanted to be dramatic, but because everything felt heavy. My skin, my heart, even my breath. Heartbreak doesn't scream when it arrives. It creeps in, silent and slow, settling into your chest like fog. You can still move, technically, still smile if someone asks, still reply, "I'm fine," but inside, you're unraveling. I kept playing that moment at his doorstep over and over again in my head. His face when he opened the door, the way he flinched when I said her name, how quickly he closed the door behind him like I was something shameful. And the hoodie. God, the hoodie. The one he used to wrap around me when I'd cry at night, the one I clung to when I missed him, the one that used to smell like love and now reeked of betrayal. I didn't eat for 2 days. I couldn't. Everything felt pointless. I deleted our chat 3 times, and each time I recovered it again just to reread the messages where he called me magic or said he'd wait forever, forever. What a stupid, cruel word. Silently, selfishly. That night, I wrote in my journal again, for the first time since Mason and I had started talking. It hurt, but it helped. I poured out everything, the memories, the confusion, the anger, and the guilt. Because underneath the heartbreak, I felt ashamed, like I had failed at love, like I had made him leave. But that's the lie we tell ourselves after a betrayal, that it was our fault, that if we were just a little less guarded, a little more giving, a little more ready, they would have stayed. But no. He didn't leave because I wasn't enough. He left because he wasn't capable of holding something as real as what I was becoming. And slowly, painfully, I started to reclaim myself. I went for long walks. I cleaned my apartment. I unfollowed him, muted mutuals, even blocked the playlist he made me. Each step felt like a tiny rebellion against the version of me that once waited for his texts. I began to notice small things I had forgotten about myself, the way I laugh out loud when I read something funny, the way I sing horribly while cooking pasta, the way I cry at movies, even the dumb rom-coms with predictable endings. I hadn't done those things around Mason. I had edited myself, slowly, unconsciously, into a version I thought he'd stay for. And how it hurt even more because I thought I was finally ready, only to be abandoned. She looked at me and said gently, "Maybe you weren't abandoning yourself anymore, and that's what scared him." That hit me like a wave. Maybe I wasn't hard to love. Maybe I was just too real for someone who wasn't ready to be real with himself. One day, I passed the rooftop where we first met. The city lights still danced the same way. The sky was clear, the wind gentle. I stood there, remembering that first night. His voice, his eyes, the way he said, "You don't seem like someone who settles." And he was right, I don't. I didn't settle for fake comfort, I didn't settle for half love, and I'm proud of that now. Healing isn't a straight line. Some days I still cry. Some nights I wake up reaching for my phone, half expecting his name to flash across the screen. It doesn't, and that's okay, because I no longer wait for people who leave quietly. I no longer romanticize boys who can't meet me in my depth. And I no longer punish myself for growing at my own pace. Some people aren't ready for love that's real. They crave chaos. They chase temporary highs. They flinch when someone offers them safety because they don't know what to do with it. And that's not my burden to carry. I wasn't too slow. I wasn't too guarded. I was just finally learning how to love in a way that honored me. And if someone walks away from that, let them. Maybe the saddest part isn't that he lied, it's that I believed him when he said he'd wait. But you know what? I'm not bitter anymore. Because the woman I'm becoming She's not afraid to be alone. She's not afraid to start again. And she sure as hell won't apologize for being hard to replace. Sometimes we think we lost the love of our life, but in truth we just lost someone who was never capable of loving us at all. Have you ever held back because you weren't ready, only to lose someone who made you feel safe? Tell me below, and let's heal together.